In this episode of Cycling Tours, I will explore the cycling network within the eastern sector of Punggol. Hey everybody, it's Transit Evolution, and for everyone watching here, welcome to Punggol. When it comes to cycling, I'll just say right from the start that Punggol is a very unique and interesting town, and there are many reasons why that is the case. We'll explore that throughout this video, but for now, let me talk about how the videos for Punggol will work. I'll cover the eastern sector of Punggol in this video, consisting of the Punggol Field and Waterway East subzones, or neighborhoods 1 and 6. The video for the western sector will cover the Matilda and Punggol Town Centre subzones, or neighbourhoods 2 and 3. As construction works are still ongoing north of Punggol North Avenue, there will be no video for the northern sector. Hence, the North Shore and Punggol Canal subzones, the former being neighbourhood 4 and the latter currently undeveloped, will not be covered in this video series. In the meantime, I'm currently travelling eastwards from Punggol MRT and LRT station. You will notice quite quickly that Punggol Central, the 6-lane road I'm travelling along right now, seems to be filled with quite a bit of construction activity. This is for the Punggol extension of the Cross Island MRT line. Construction works have just begun in Punggol a few months back, towards the end of last year. Unlike Pasir Ris though, there are no intentions for road closures in Punggol, perhaps because the roadways here are big enough for lane reduction to suffice, from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. Unfortunately, I didn't have the foresight to make a video about Punggol earlier in this video series existence, so pardon the temporary structures which you will see along the way. As I continue my straightforward journey along Punggol Central through the Gridiron Street layout, perhaps it will be a good time for me to briefly describe the history of Punggol. Punggol was one of the oldest settlements in Singapore, dating back 400 years to pre-colonial times. By the colonial era, fishing activities and rubber plantations are aplenty in this rural part of Singapore. Punggol was also briefly the centre for poultry farming and pig rearing industries, which got relocated from elsewhere. However, they were heavily polluting industries, and eventually even those were phased out by 1989. Further north near Punggol Point, the area was also known as a popular spot for seafood, boating, and water sports. Eventually in the 1990s, it was decided that Punggol would be developed as a new town, with plans formally announced under the Punggol 21 initiative in 1996, 21 referring to it being a model town for the 21st century. One thing that was introduced in Punggol was a new concept of estates. Instead of being organized into larger neighborhoods, flats will be grouped into smaller estates, with between 1,200 and 2,800 dwelling units sharing a common green at the heart of the estate, where the playground lies. These common greens are linked to green connectors that form a grid intersecting with the roadways mid-block, and they do still exist today, though their quality varies between estates. Meanwhile, each estate also features a primary or secondary school. The few precincts within the estate will feature integrated multi-story car parks, and it was thought that this would make these estates pedestrian-friendly. It's worth noting that back then, it was assumed that since the lifestyles of people were changing, moving away from neighborhood centers to shopping malls, there was a less pressing need for neighborhood centers. Therefore, Punggol was originally planned without neighborhood centers, but instead with a shopping center at the town center and 3 to 4 commercial centers at the corners of the town. It has a light rail transit system integrated into its design from the start, with local shop clusters near LRT stations to meet the most basic of daily needs. The result is a pretty homogeneous landscape, mainly consisting of housing and schools interspersed along the way. Of course, one of the main selling features of Punggol was and still is waterfront living. I'll deal with that part later on when we move on to the park connector network. In the meantime though, let's talk about the cycling path network. The initial network here, mainly south of Punggol Waterway and along Punggol Field and Punggol Central, was completed in 2016, making Punggol the 7th town with a cycling path network. This was built under contract TR129, awarded in 2014, and they consist of grey cycling paths. These paths will often disappear at the slightest of inconveniences, such as when the cycling path passes a school or a condominium. They also follow arterial roads, which are starting to become a little wider and less pleasant to walk or cycle along in Punggol, making a journey here not ideal. This is especially the case as I cycle across Punggol Neighbourhood Police Centre and Fire Station, where I travel quite a great distance, unprotected from the elements. It's not helping that this is also an active construction work site for the future Riviera MRT station of the Cross Island Line. We'll deal with the north-south roadways later, but for now, I'll travel along this cycling path running next to the LRT tracks of the East Loop. Not the most rideable, but at least it exists. Passing Coral Edge LRT station, I pass Punggol Plaza, the first ever shopping mall in Punggol, which opened in 2004. Up until then, residents here will have to travel as far as Sengkang or Pasir Ris just to meet their daily needs. This may even explain why there are still bus connections to those towns today along Punggol Field, much further than the newer neighbourhoods of Punggol. Passing Meridian LRT station, you'll notice that the environment here is remarkably residential. But if you look closely, there is a cluster of shops across the street to my left, 108 Punggol Field. Unfortunately, it will be hard to get there by bike unless you cross the roadway earlier at an intersection and traveled on the other side of the road, which lacks a cycling path. Now, Punggol is a town where streets are starting to get a little bigger than how they used to be designed in the past, with 2 lanes in each direction. Perhaps this is thanks to the higher density of residences, and partially because a greedy road layout makes every access road a direct through road for motorists, thereby functioning as an arterial as well. With an LRT line running along the road median, fences were installed to prevent pedestrians from crossing the road mid-block, which makes it significantly harder for people to walk or cycle out of their estates into adjacent ones, as they have to use the pedestrian overhead bridges built into the LRT station. In older towns, signalized or even raised zebra crossings would be used. These borders make the roads and streets of Punggol less walkable and more car-friendly. Of course, there's that greedy system of pedestrian walkways built through the heart of each estate, intersecting with the roads at mid-block. They provide car-free environments for walking, but because cycling paths are not built along any of them, they will not be featured in this video. I now pass 198 Punggol Field, the commercial block with clustered shops for Cove LRT station, with a supermarket and food court. At this juncture, I'm going to make a right turn back into Punggol Road, where I will just keep travelling northwards until I approach Punggol Waterway. In the meantime, let's talk a little about why Punggol look and feel the way it is today. In the year 2000, when Punggol was first shaping up into reality, there was a target to make the quality of public housing here comparable to that of private condominiums, given increasing affluence and changing lifestyles. The look of these blocks therefore aimed to provide a condominium-like feel, such as through the use of full-view windows. But unfortunately, Punggol 21 didn't pan out as intended. In 2002, housing demand plunged due to a market slowdown, resulting in an overbuilding of flats. Thus, few new housing developments were built, and the town continues to have few shops and massive transportation problems. Then, in 2007, Punggol was re-envisioned under a new Punggol 21 Plus plan. Most of the housing blocks north of this intersection will be built after the announcement of this plan. Under Punggol 21 Plus, Sungai Punggol to the west and Sungai Serangoon to the east were to be dammed to turn into new reservoirs, strengthening Singapore's water security. Due to hydrological concerns, a pipeline has to be built to connect the two reservoirs. It was then decided that a pipeline will be built in the form of a man-made river, now known as My Waterway at Punggol, which will help to bring the dream of waterfront living closer to more residents. This 4.2-kilometer waterway, running from east to west, also mitigated the dense built environment of Punggol, while bringing water to the town centre. So, you've heard me ramble quite a bit about the waterway already. It's now time for me to show you the waterway, which I will do by going down this windy path opposite Waterway Brooks to a park connector along the southern bank of the waterway. Park connectors run along both sides of the waterway, but I will only be travelling along the southern side of it today. Unlike the cycling paths on the roadside which I travelled along earlier, the journey along this park connector is fast, smooth, and seamless. This is practically a cycling highway. There's no need to stop at traffic lights, and the environment is much more pleasant, without vehicular pollution and with better tree cover. I would now like to talk about the waterway's implication on cycling connectivity in Punggol, which presents a unique problem that is quite unlike that of other cycling towns in Singapore. You see, Punggol Waterway is located at a lower elevation, closer to sea level, and is therefore completely grade separated from the road network with bridges. The implication for cycling connectivity is that, for the most part, Punggol has two cycling network systems that function mostly independently from each other, unlike other towns where someone on a cycling path can easily transition to the park connector. When the park connector first opened in 2011, one complaint lodged about it is how difficult it is to access the waterway from elsewhere, to which the response was that access will be improved with the completion of adjacent developments. In 2024, most of the housing developments fronting the waterway have been completed. One of the developments along this stretch of the waterway is Oasis Terrace to my right, Singapore's first new generation neighbourhood centre, built in 2019 to serve Neighbourhood 6, while linking Oasis LRT station to the waterway. It features a polyclinic, a 7-storey mall, and more public spaces than privately operated neighbourhood centres. Meanwhile, further up ahead, as I pass Waterway Woodcrest, you'll see a road bridge holding Edgedale Plains. Behind it is a condominium precinct, the Terrace, and you can see that a shared path ramp was built to connect the footpath at the road level with the park connector at the waterway level. These features help to improve cycling connectivity between the waterway and the roadway, but they are not always present to connect footpaths on both sides of the road, with park connectors on both sides of the waterway. This complicates wayfinding and make the park connector and cycling paths function more independently. Now, it is said that Punggol will eventually have a 50-kilometer cycling network, which is possibly the densest in the world, at 5.2 kilometers per 1 kilometer squared of town area, denser than Helsinki, the capital of Finland. But the grade separation means that the actual cycling network that's immediately available to you may be less, depending on which system you take. You can either take the cycling path network, which spans Punggol better but puts you in plenty of conflict with vehicles, or you can take this park connector network, which is limited to the 4 rivers but functions effectively as a seamless cycling highway. This is not to mention that the path along the waterway is double counted on both sides of it, although it generally gets you to the same places, so the effective network length would be even shorter. As I travel further along, it's also worth pointing out that the park connector here is practically separated into a footpath and a cycling path, but this is done informally with the use of textures instead of paint. Ideally, cyclists would use the asphalt, avoiding other park users who may be enjoying the sights and sounds of the waterway from the brick textured path. Honestly, this works surprisingly well, perhaps even better than newer park connector designs, which are separated with the use of mere paint. Travelling along Punggol Promenade Riverside Walk, we've just passed the Sunrise Bridge, one of the 2 cyclable bridges located at both ends of the waterway to allow for seamless travel across it. We've also passed the Lorong Halus Red Bridge, which connects to the Lorong Halus Park Connector, where it's possible to travel further east into Pasir Ris. Now, as I move southwards, you will notice that things become a little less lively along the eastern edge of Punggol. Even today, many land parcels remain vacant along this stretch of the Riverside Walk, patiently awaiting housing developments. We briefly passed Punggol Container Park, where there are plenty of alfresco dining options in the restaurants by the riverside. Things can get pretty loud here at times, but before long, we return to relative peace. Pardon the construction project that's going on here, as I transition into the stretch of Sungai Serangoon Park Connector within Punggol. We are now squarely under Halus Bridge, a really wide bridge holding the Tampines Expressway. Our journey along this park connector will end here today, and I shall now rewind to Waterway Sunrise and re-enter the cycling path network at Punggol Drive. I think it's worth noting that Punggol's cycling network is a work in progress at the moment. Some of the cycling paths remain unpainted, and amongst those which are, some of them are grey while the others are red. Unlike some other towns, Punggol's network isn't built in some massive contract, but iteratively over time, through quite a few projects which also involve cycling paths in other towns as well. This video will only cover cycling paths which have been completed as of early 2024. And you can be sure that many more paths will eventually be completed in the coming years, such as along the road bridges spanning across the waterway, and a few missing links which you encounter along the way. We are now travelling along the east side of Edgedale Plains. Because of the greedy street layout that's present in this part of Punggol, there's not much to talk about for this very ordinary red cycling path here, so I'll pause until we reach Oasis Terrace. The shared path abruptly ends right before I reach Oasis Terrace, and I'm now travelling along Punggol Drive, passing Waterway Woodcrest. As is common in Punggol, driveways are routed along the periphery of each housing precinct, which helps to make the centre of the precinct more pedestrian-friendly, though at the expense of the frontage of adjacent roadways like Punggol Drive. Punggol Drive is akin to an alleyway serving as a backdoor for motorists to enter their households, which is why cycling here feels less pleasant. Instead, all the street life now takes place off a road, along a car-free Punggol waterway, so residents here hardly have a reason to walk along this car-dominated environment. Meanwhile, an older cycling path also exists along the west side of Edgedale Plains, this one dating back to the initial network from 2016. Now passing Edgedale Green, pay attention to what's on my right. Do you see it? If you saw a path running along the northern edge of Horizon Primary, that's correct. And just a short distance ahead, we have a mid-block crossing where you can move from one of these paths to another one in the adjacent estate. Such paths run perpendicular to the grid road layout and connect residents directly to the common green in the middle of the estate. This is a distinctly Pongo design, which promotes filtered permeability that makes the estate more walkable. It was supposed to be much more significant than this though, akin to a fully fledged park connector in the initial plans. Pedestrian connections were often weakened by misaligned mid-block crossings or pedestrian overhead bridges, and in later years, they shrunk down to the size of a footpath, or even became completely missing. Unfortunately, that means that this walkway system is not well known, even amongst those living in this town. You can see what I meant over here. South of Greendale Secondary School, you see such a path connecting directly to the common green once again, but it is a little too small, and probably chucked away as an afterthought to be implemented into this precinct. I'm now travelling along Pongo East, the easternmost road in Pongo, where I will be passing Riviera LRT station shortly. Unlike the first 3 stations of the Pongo LRT East Loop, there appear to be no signs of clustered shops at this LRT station. There's remarkably little going on here, for what is supposed to be a future interchange station with the Cross Island Line. In the meantime, pardon me as I slowly make my way towards Pongo North Avenue. Passing Waterway Primary, I'll travel along a footpath to cross the waterway. A cycling path will soon be added to this side of the road. However, notice the lack of a rideable way to access the waterway from here. There's one on the other side of the bridge on my right, but it's going to be hard to get to from here. It is such details which result in missing connections that makes it difficult to get in and out of the cycling superhighway, park connector. Welcome to Pongo North Avenue. This 6-lane arterial road opened last year with a carnival and is one of the first roadways in Singapore to feature a cycling path on both sides, for a pretty substantial length. Of course, this is still a car-dominated environment, but it could have been much worse. The original land use plan for Pongo is to have a depressed semi-expressway running along this right-of-way. connecting to adjacent roadways purely with expressway light interchanges, connecting Yishun and Seletar with Pasir Ris. If it came into fruition, the roadway would have been so wide that this footpath would have been directly next to the public housing precincts to my left. Fortunately, this plan hasn't come to fruition yet. The result is a rather significant patch of grassland between this road and precincts like Waterway Sundew to my left, which probably can be put to much better use than more lanes. For now though, I briefly stop talking so that you can have a feel of what cycling in such an environment sounds like. At this juncture, I've turned back onto Punggol Road, where I'll give a summary of my cycling experience here. Honestly, Punggol does have a good potential to be a great cycling town, but it's not quite there yet. The waterway, a hallmark feature that makes both recreational and commuting cycling through Punggol great, is unfortunately not well integrated with the roadside cycling network. If connections can be guaranteed along at least 2, or ideally all 4 approaches where each road crosses the river, that will make things a lot better. Further south, it's a shame to see that the idea of green connectors through common greens not fully realized to improve walking and cycling connectivity. I suppose that idea may have been lost in translation. Meanwhile, the roadways of Punggol are generally much bigger than those in public housing towns that precede them, with obstacles that make it harder for pedestrians to cross the road, and that is not ideal. However, since there's already more space, it does mean that there's more room to implement car-like possibilities. But for some reason, no such road repurposing or traffic calming projects have been done here yet. Yes, Punggol is one of the last towns in Singapore to not see a single street turned into a silver zone and the like. However it is, I now come to the end of this episode of Cycling Tours. What do you think about the 2 cycling networks of Punggol? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to hit subscribe and the bell if you have not done so, and consider supporting me using the super thanks function of YouTube. This is Transit Evolution, signing off.